The airport security line was long, the kind that tests everyone's patience. Among the tired travelers, a quiet young woman stood alone, clutching an old, worn-out backpack. Her clothes were simple, her shoes dusty, and she looked like someone no one would remember once she passed by. But that was about to change. It all started when a security officer, slightly annoyed by the slow-moving line, signaled her forward. She nodded politely and stepped ahead. But as soon as her bag went through the scanner, another officer frowned. A silent exchange of glances happened behind the counter, and suddenly they asked her to open it. She hesitated, not out of guilt, but almost like she was protecting something fragile. Still, without protest, she unzipped the top. That's when things shifted. One officer, clearly impatient, reached in and pulled out what looked like a small velvet box. He opened it casually, then stopped cold. A few more curious eyes peeked in. Within seconds, what was once a normal day turned tense. The room, filled with chatter and rolling suitcases, fell silent. Even the conveyor belts seemed to pause. Inside the box sat a gleaming metal. Not just any metal, but one that even a few of the guards recognized immediately. Real gold. Engraved, official, and rare. The young woman didn't say a word. She just looked at them, calm and quiet, almost like she'd been through this before. One guard blinked, unsure of what to say. Another stepped back, whispering something to his colleague. Suddenly, people were turning to look, phones half raised, whispering, "Who is she?" But no one had the full story. Not yet. What they didn't know was the journey that led her there, what she had done, what that medal truly meant, not just to the world, but to her, and why she had kept it hidden until now. The guards stepped aside as a supervisor was called over. He examined the medal with furrowed brows, reading the inscription slowly under his breath. Something about it seemed to carry weight beyond what met the eye. The young woman, still silent, kept her gaze fixed on the floor, like she'd seen this kind of reaction before. The people around her were no longer just travelers. They were spectators, caught in a moment they didn't understand. A few whispered guesses started spreading. Is it real? Did she win it? Why is she traveling alone with that? Nobody knew her name. Nobody recognized her face. And yet, the medal looked like something that belonged to history books or national ceremonies. Security moved her to a side room, still unsure what to do. She sat down calmly, placing the bag beside her, as though she'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. One of the officers, a younger man who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "Where did you get this?" he asked, gently, not with suspicion, but with curiosity. She looked up, meeting his eyes. There was pain there, but also strength, and something else, resolve. "I earned it," she said softly. "But it costs more than most people would ever understand." That answer only deepened the mystery. Who was she? What had she done? Why was someone with a medal of that importance walking through an airport unnoticed, carrying it in a regular backpack? There were no answers yet, just more questions. And all around her, people were starting to sense that this wasn't just about a medal. It was about a story far bigger than what could fit inside that velvet box. But no one knew just how big. Not yet. The small interview room was quiet, with only the hum of a nearby vending machine breaking the silence. The officer across from her gently closed the file he had started to open, unsure how to even begin. "Your name?" he asked. "Mira," she replied. The name didn't trigger any immediate reaction, but somewhere deep in the officer's memory, it stirred something. He typed it into the system, slowly, not expecting much. But as the screen refreshed, he leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. The search results weren't what he'd expected. Headlines popped up in different languages. A few grainy images. One photo of a young woman standing on a makeshift podium, barefoot, holding the same medal. The caption was in another language, but the words "Regional Champion," "National Controversy," and "Military Scandal" stood out. He looked up, his voice quieter now. "You disappeared 3 years ago." Mira said nothing. Hands were steady, but her eyes held memories that were hard to put into words. Outside the room, 2 more officers discussed what little they knew. "She won a national competition, then just vanished," one whispered. There was something about a protest. Maybe corruption in the judging system? It was covered up quickly. Back inside, Mira finally spoke. "I didn't vanish. I was silenced." The medal was never supposed to leave the country. That raised even more questions. What kind of medal was this, and why would it be hidden? Was it about pride or something more dangerous? Meanwhile, an older man in a gray suit stood at the airport's arrivals area, looking around nervously. He checked his watch, then pulled out a phone. "She's here," he said. "But she still has it. I told you, she wouldn't let it go." Far from over, Mira's story was just beginning. The people watching her weren't all strangers. Some knew exactly who she was and what that medal meant. The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing second. Mira sat still, but her pulse was racing. Across from her, the officer now realized he was caught in something far more complicated than a routine airport check. He looked back at the screen, reading headlines more carefully this time. Mentions of a sports federation scandal, missing prize money, forged signatures, then suddenly, her name disappearing from the records completely. Outside the room, the man in the gray suit was no longer waiting. He was walking briskly toward the terminal's restricted area, flashing a badge that shouldn't have opened the gate, but did. 2 others followed behind him, both wearing plain clothes, their movements rehearsed. They weren't here to welcome Mira. They were here to make sure her story never got told. Inside, the younger officer leaned closer. "If this is what I think it is, you're in danger. Why come now? Why here?" Mira finally met his gaze, because someone has to speak. And this, she tapped the medal gently, is the only thing they couldn't erase. Her voice shook just slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was carrying. Suddenly, a sharp knock rattled the door. The officer stood, confused. We're in the middle of. He opened it halfway, only to be met by the man in the suit who flashed a fake smile and a fake ID. "We're here to escort the girl. Official request from higher up." The officer hesitated. Something felt wrong. Mira stood up, her bag in hand. But her eyes were locked on the man in the suit. Recognition flashed across her face. She whispered, "He was there. The night they took everything." The tension cracked like ice under pressure. Every eye in the room knew something was about to happen. But what? And who would walk out of that room next? No one could say for sure. Yet, the officer didn't move. He was trained to follow protocol, but instinct told him something was off. Mira's face said it all. Her body froze. Her fingers clutched the metal box tighter, and her eyes stayed locked on the man in the suit. The air in the room thickened with tension. "Let me see that ID again," the officer said. The man in the suit smiled wider, but his eyes were cold. "There's no time. She's late for a scheduled handover. Higher security clearance than you're authorized to question." His voice was calm, but every word felt rehearsed. Mira's voice cut through. "He's not government. He works for the committee. The same ones who buried everything after the medal ceremony." The officer stepped back slightly, suddenly unsure who he could trust. The man in the suit reached into his jacket too fast. The younger officer instinctively pulled the door shut and locked it behind him. "What is this?" the officer asked, now breathing harder. Mira looked at him with urgency. "They don't want the story out." This metal's evidence, not just of the win, but of everything they did to silence athletes like me. Meanwhile, outside, the terminal's intercom flickered. A name was called. Not Mira's, but another woman's, in the crowd. A figure turned, someone with the same quiet presence, same cautious eyes. Mira's sister Anya had made it through a different route. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she had her own copy of the files Mira had lost. Back inside, Mira pulled a small USB from the lining of her backpack. "It's all here," she whispered. "Not just my story, all of them. Names, documents, even the footage they thought was deleted." The officer's eyes widened. This wasn't just about one medal. It was a full-scale cover-up. It's corruption, abuse, blackmail, and now the people behind it were walking through the airport closing. The officer stared at the USB in Mira's hand like it was burning through the air. He realized then this wasn't about checking bags or medals. It was about truth being smuggled out right under their noses. Outside, the suited man was now making calls, growing more impatient with every passing second. Reinforcements were coming, but so was something else -AANYA. As the officer debated his next move, the room's emergency alarm blared. Red lights flashed. A message echoed through the terminal. Security lockdown initiated. All personnel remain in position. The officer turned to Mira. "That wasn't me." Mira's face lit up, not in panic, but in quiet realization. "It's her," she said. "My sister's here." At the same time, Anya had reached the central security booth, holding her own copy of the files. She hadn't gone to the press. She'd gone to someone even more powerfully, retired judge known for taking down corruption cases tied to sports officials. The judge